Thank you so much. Thanks for coming. It's a bit of a strange transition from ISIS to Donald Trump, I think. But he will be a recurring theme apparently, so we're going to talk about him again a little bit later. But what I really want to do today is talk a little bit about why the appeal of Donald Trump, or the apparent appeal of Donald Trump, is actually not all that surprising, and that there's in some ways a long-standing history of us being really interested in and excited about celebrities running for office. So what I love about this picture is someone made it, first of all. I did not make this, but we assume that if he were in the White House, it may be all encrusted in gold. And so the question really is, why do we hire these celebrity politicians, right? Is he going to be hired? So the first thing we have to look at here is this, which is one of the latest polls from Real Clear Politics that looks at where all the candidates on the Republican side stand in terms of their approval. And so what I did here is start with when Donald Trump announced, he's the blue line. So this is in June 16th, when he announces his candidacy. And pretty quickly, he starts to shoot up, and then he shoots up even faster and continues to stay there. Now, what we'll talk about as we move through a little bit is that the top 3 candidates right now have never been in politics before. And there's something appealing right now, at least, about that. And in that way, with Donald Trump having no experience in politics, that doesn't make him necessarily unique. What does make him unique is we question what about him specifically, if anything, is so appealing, right? What is it about him compared to Fiorina, compared to Carson, that people are responding to, that some Republicans are responding to? We want to answer this question. Well, so here's just this is my little brief lesson of political science today, right? Rather than talking a little bit more broadly. So what we know to be true is that we know that those that have elected office experience, those that have a network, those that can raise money and already have money, do significantly better when they run for office, and then when they get there, they can stay there. Right? And this is at the congressional level. This changes a little at the presidential level because we assume everyone that runs can be funded. We assume everyone that runs has some kind of political experience. That looks a little different right now with our top 3 candidates on the Republican side. Okay, so this is what political science knows to be true. What we also know is that it's really difficult for amateur candidates, so those that don't have elected experience, those that don't have money, it's really difficult for them to get support because nobody knows who they are. And they don't have the money to get their name out there. But the people that they're running against have all of that money. Well, this automatically is overcome by celebrities. They have a bankroll, they have name recognition, and they pretty much have media attention wherever and whenever they want. So we're going to look at a little bit of a history of those that have run for office before, those that were celebrities in some way. And we see that they were successful because they had this name recognition. And then we'll also talk about how Donald Trump does look a little different in some ways in this respect. Does anybody know who this is? I know we're not supposed to take question and answer. Raise your hand if you know who this is. Let's try that. I got one up in here. Nice work. Okay. I'll tell you in a second who this is. Do we know who this is? Yeah, we know who this is. I love that, we all know the Hey Girl, the Ryan Gosling Hey Girl, so I particularly like this one because he's talking about something close to my heart. So we're right here in this one, okay? Do we know who this is? I'm from Cleveland. Woohoo! I definitely know who this is. Anyone else? Okay. So when we think about, if we go back for a second, we know who LeBron James is. We know who Ryan Gosling is. This woman's name is Tanya Corey, and she's actually running for Congress in the district right next to where we are, right? So one person knows who she is. She has elected experience, office experience. People in the community know who she is, sort of. But if she wants to run for office and nobody knows who she is, and she's running against Ryan Gosling, like to see that race, or running against LeBron James, what kind of chance does she have, even if she has what we assume to be the right kind of experience when running for office? This is where celebrities have a huge advantage. So there was a book written back in the 1990s, and it talked about the 3 A's: athletes, astronauts, and actors. And these are the 3 non-politically related types of people that do really well when they run for office. Now, the space program is not what it used to be, so astronauts are not We don't have as many of them. They're not really running for office at the same rate. But actors and athletes are still two categories of celebrities that do really well when they run for office. Now, typically, they don't start at the presidential level. So this is where, again, Donald Trump looks a little bit different. We do have a significant history of these things happening. This is not new, as I just said. So let's look at some examples, some of my favorite examples. Oh, the 1960s television. I can tell you I was very happy when I found this on Google Images. We dive into television. Now, the thing that's interesting about the 1960s is this is where televisions are in every home for the first time. And so people who maybe wouldn't have had the same kind of exposure that either had political aspirations or had never thought about it had a platform into the homes of every American. So this gentleman is one of them. I don't know if any of us know who this gentleman is. Maybe some of the colleagues, my colleagues that are my age, know who this is. Dr. Caliendo, Dr. Brandt, good, I got a shout out here. Or this woman. Now, here I see some lights go off, right? So that's Cher, which I think more people knew. The gentleman to her left, that's Sonny Bono, and they were married, and they had a very, very popular TV show called Sonny and Cher. Actually, I think it was the Sonny and Cher Variety Hour. And they toured, and they had albums, and they were two of the biggest celebrities in the world, and they were married. So they do divorce, and he has to try to find something to do, because when you divorce Cher, like, what do? Right? I'm not sure what comes next. He's like, maybe I'll run for Congress. So in 1994, he gets elected to Congress in California, and he's remarried at this point. He serves for a pretty good amount of time, and then unfortunately, he passes away in a skiing accident, and his wife takes his seat. But this is one of the first times that we'd seen a TV star successfully run for Congress and sort of use his celebrity and his very famous and fancy celebrity ex-wife to be successful. We move along to this guy. Love this guy. Okay, so this is Al Franken, and he was first a writer on Saturday Night Live, and then kind of an intermittent cast member on Saturday Night Live. And he did a lot on Weekend Update because he was always very politically interested. And after he leaves Saturday Night Live, he starts writing books, and he eventually becomes Senator Franken. Now, what's interesting about how he won is that the race was so close. He won in Minnesota. The race was so close, it took a month to do the recount to figure out if he became the senator or not. And he did, and he's still senator now. So he goes from being this sort of like goofball character on Saturday Night Live and being politically interested and talking about political things to then becoming a senator, which is sort of, I would argue, I think we agree, a bigger jump from, Saturday Night Live to the Senate as opposed to, the Variety Hour to the House, right? And this is one of my personal favorites. We talk about the state level. We got this guy. Yeah, we got this guy, right? Okay, this is Jesse the Body Ventura. Now, people of my generation remember watching what was called the WWF at the time, and he was one of the biggest stars in that arena, let's just say, okay? He eventually becomes Governor Ventura, okay? Now, what's interesting is that this is a pretty big jump, right? Because this is to an executive. This is then running a state. And what was interesting about him, there's a lot of things, is that once he gets in, he kind of has no idea what to do, which sometimes happens with the celebrity politicians, but he doesn't know how to work with the media, and he still kind of keeps that Jesse the Body persona when he's working with people. And some would argue that he kind of went off the reservation a little bit and kind of freaked out and didn't really understand how he's supposed to be working with other members of government because he never had the experience. And by the time he leaves office, no one was excited to think about him being in office again. I'll just say it this way. So this is some examples of, because he was a television star. Well, there's also athletes. Now, while there are other athletes who have become members of government that are not football players, there's baseball players as well, most of them have come from the football field. And in fact, most of them were quarterbacks, which makes sense, right? The leader of the team, they can rally, they can get all, they can take direction from the coaches, but they know how to make audibles and change if they have to. And they have that sort of like charismatic presence about them. Okay, so most of them were quarterbacks. We go back, as far back, at least as I want to go, to this gentleman here. This is pretty far back if they had football cards. I mean, this is definitely far back. This is Jack Kemp. Okay, so he was a quarterback. He played for the Bills, and he was an all-star. He was one of the most prolific quarterbacks in the NFL during his time, and some would argue still. So what he decides to do is he takes all of that notoriety and he runs for Congress. And he's a House member in New York for about 12 years. Then he becomes the HHS secretary. And then he runs for president. That doesn't work. But then he becomes the vice presidential running mate for Bob Dole in 1996. So he, some would argue, is actually one of the most successful athletes turned politicians because he had this trajectory that could have taken him to the White House. Okay? And there he is. And so I love this picture, right? Because it's like he's got the football ring, he's holding the football, you can trust this guy, but he's got the suit on and he's in DC. He's like, let me take my leadership ability on the football field and put it to use for you as a member of government. Okay? Now we talk about this guy. Okay? This guy, I see some nods. Okay? This is Steve Largent, arguably still one of the best receivers in football. Okay? And he played for the Seahawks mostly. So after he leaves and retires very successfully, he's like, okay, what am I going to do now? Well, he's very well known. And he's from Oklahoma, and so what he does is then he runs for Congress, and he becomes a House member and an NRA advocate. So he's a Republican, he's from Oklahoma. This is not all that surprising that he's an NRA advocate, but what's so great about this is, I don't know if you can see here, but he's got a shotgun on his shoulder. And then, you can't read this very well, and I apologize, but the picture was just too beautiful because then it's got the person with the shotgun at the bottom. And if you could read it, it talks about, as my time as an NFL receiver, Hall of Fame receiver, and my time in Congress has taught me the value of the National Rifle Association. So now we're getting even more political. We're making some statements here, okay? We look at one more. We look at this gentleman here. This is J.C. Watts. He played quarterback for Oklahoma, and then he actually did not succeed in the NFL. He ended up playing in the Canadian League for a while. He runs for Congress in 1994, and he wins in Oklahoma as well. And so we've actually, interesting thing about J.C. Watts is sort of one of the first black Republican House members, and pretty successful at the time that he served. So again, we sort of see this like parlaying it from one to the other. And then finally, we've got to talk about movie stars. We talk about this guy. How do we talk about celebrity politicians and not talk about Arnold Schwarzenegger? The only A-list celebrity to ever win office. Most of them had like B, C-list celebrities. He's still arguably at the top of his game when he becomes the governor.
Who's the man standing up for what's right? The governor. Check the computer for robots to fight. The governor. Right now in California, there is evil happening. There is stealing and murder and raping of women and all of this kind of thing. Chaos and mayhem, I think that's my cue. The governor. Who is your daddy and what does he do? The governor. The governor.
Obviously not endorsed by Arnold Schwarzenegger, that video, okay? So this takes us to our discussion of Ronald Reagan, okay? So we sort of end with him for a couple of reasons. One is he's the only actor to ever have become president. What is different and important to note about Ronald Reagan is that he was the governor of California first. He didn't jump from actor to president. He had a political career that he could then use to boost him when he was running for president to say, yes, I was an actor, but I don't actually really want to talk about that very much. That celebrity is not relevant. My time as governor of California is relevant. But he understands, how can a president not be an actor? Right? Hitting your mark, playing your part, line of the day, schmoozing other people, right? So this takes us to Donald Trump. How is he different? Okay? He wants to make America great again. How can he make America great again? Why are people believing him? Why is he so different? Is a lot of what people are asking. That's a lot of questions people are asking. Well, what political scientists say, and I being one of them, says he's not that different, in fact. He's really not. He doesn't break the mold. And there's two main reasons why. The first of which we see in this graph here. What I'm about to show you comes from John Sides, who is one of the founders of the Monkey Cage blog. And did I just hear a woohoo? Nice, yes. Well, worked with John Sides, of course. Anyway, the point of the graph here is to show that those who are dissatisfied with government like the candidates who've never been in government. Well, duh. I mean, I don't say that very often, but I think it's appropriate here, right? If you don't like who's in government, then you like people who are not in government. But this is not exclusive to Trump, right? This is all of the candidates so far, including Bernie Sanders, although he's been a member of government for a long time, but those in the Republican side. We don't like what's going on in DC, so we like them. He's not that different. The question, though, is why is he liked more than the other candidates? Again, this is not surprising according to political science. So John Sides and Lynn Vavreck wrote a book called The Gamble about the 2012 presidential election. And they argue that in the primary stage, there's something called discovery, scrutiny, and decline. We discover a candidate, and we've never seen this candidate, or at least in this capacity before. And then as we discover them, so does the media. And the media starts to give them more coverage, more coverage, more coverage. And we see here that as the news coverage increases, and even as it ebbs and flows, how he does in the polls matches it pretty closely. Pretty closely. What ends up happening, though, is with that media coverage and that discovery becomes scrutiny, a lot of scrutiny. Now, with Donald Trump, we kind of already know what this guy is like. We know what we expect to come out of his mouth when he's on television. How are those conversations going to play out when he's talking to leaders of foreign nations? So as this discovery comes out, the scrutiny of the media comes out, inevitably we see a decline in poll numbers. And those candidates that are sort of waiting at the bottom, the Rubios, the Cruzes, the Bushes, they're just waiting for the bottom to drop out, because it always does. And they can rise up and try to really stake their claim for the nomination. It tells us why Donald Trump looks so popular right now. Thanks so much, guys. Thank you for coming.